Well, anyway, I was on a less is more journey, and now I'm like, you know what? Screw it. More is more. More is better. Whoa, how appropriate. Anyway, okay, so.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right? Okay, so, but let's talk about, can we talk about my drive here real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, because it's something we've been talking about for a while.
Okay. You know how normally,
How many potholes did you hit?
I wasn't paying attention because I was so angry at the person going so slow in front of me. And I kept thinking, in like Germany, what is it, like the Autobahn when it's
No
not...
speed limit.
When there's no speed limit, generally people like zoom. Here, of course, it's the extreme opposite, and people are going like 8 miles an hour. I'm like, come on. Come on.
How many school zones did you drive through, though?
2, but I went slow through those because I know that's very important to me. But I'm thinking, what is the speed limit after you pass... I don't know, what is it, 12th, 24th, 18th? I don't even know.
Well, at 12th and Main, there's the sign as you're headed west. It says end of school zone.
Yeah, then there's not a speed limit sign.
There's not a speed limit sign after that.
Yeah, and I know that it used to be 25 at some point, right? Mm-hmm. But now I don't even know if I'm breaking the law. I'm sure I am because that's just how I roll.
I think if there's no 25 sign, then it would go back to the 30 that it was before the school zone, but it's just completely unmarked.
But where we live out in the southeast part of town, though, if Harrison's not effed up like it is now, I take Harrison all the way down to Gardner Expressway if I'm going downtown, if I don't have to make any other stops. Yeah. Boom, boom.
Me too, but right now it's like I go that way and then I turn right, and I hate State Street for some reason, so then I just go Main, and Main is like...
That's where all the schools are. Stay off Main.
Well, not just that. It's where all the people go to dilly-dally.
It's because it's the pretty drive.
Yeah.
Layla always says and asks if we can drive, if we're driving home from the east side of town, if we can drive on Main Street.
So I'm behind you, looking at pretties, because I'm like this. Get out of my way!
I'm not looking at the pretties. No. I'm letting her look at the pretties.
So anyway, that's my soapbox for right now, because it took me 10 minutes longer than it should have to get here.
So do you think it should be 30 or 25?
I'm okay with 25, but I want people to at least go 25. Because
70.
It seems like when you mark anywhere marked in Quincy, if it's 25, they're going 20. If it's 35, they're going 30. Unless you're behind a Bob or a me, or probably you, then we're all breaking the law. But at least go the speed limit. But in order to do that, we have to know what the speed limit is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing real quick before I mentioned last time, just on a whim, the school board, the offices, the facade of it. Got some intel. They're redoing the facade of the building. And I started wondering, why hasn't anyone questioned why this is taking so long?
Or why'd you spend the money on that instead of spending the money on putting lights on the ball field?
Got it. Okay. Yes, that's what my other bitch was. I have since learned that there was, it has nothing to do with the contractor or any installation. It had to do with the materials sourced and the fact that it wasn't what was expected. And as far as I know, the architect is eating the cost of the redo. So it's not taxpayer funded. It has nothing to do with the contractor. It was that the material, when the sun was shining on it, looked like crap, and it wasn't okay by anyone's standards. So put that to bed. Sorry for
Wasn't there some vertical horizontal thing too?
No, as far as I know, it was just the material, and it could have been that because it was placed a certain way that the sheen is like an oil pan look when the sun hits it a certain way, it just looked like crap. And it could have been because it was vertical versus horizontal, but either way, it wasn't either spec'd correctly or the material wasn't up to par. But I just wanted to throw that out there because I just snuck it in and didn't know my head from a hole in the ground, and I wanted to clear that up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like when we clear things up.
Yeah, because I'm
Generally
wrong.
The way we should operate.
I'm wrong once in a blue moon, and that was it. So that's all.
Also, real quick before we get in, I'm wearing this shirt today for a reason. I think we all know why.
What's it say? I didn't even see it.
Well, it's Doc Holliday.
It is
Val
Kilmer,
who passed this week.
R.I.P.
So
what was his name? Started with an M in the
he was Iceman. In Top Gun.
There was another one too, but he was one of my heartthrobs.
Mount Rushmore of Val Kilmer movies, best 4?
I don't know. I think, of course, when he was Iceman, right? That was
Top
Gun, yeah. But was he in Batman?
That's not one of his best movies. Let's not talk about that.
Was he hot in that movie, though? Because that's all I'm thinking about.
Yes, he's an attractive man.
There we go.
But no, he's not. No, he and Clooney are like at the bottom of that Batman basement there. So
still great looking though.
Tombstone, hello. We just talked about it.
Yeah.
That holiday, I'm your Huckleberry. You're a daisy if you don't.
Yeah.
Wow, Johnny Ringo, you look like somebody just walked over your grave.
I'm not.
I watched it last night.
I'm not an aficionado.
Did he play
The 200 time.
Jim Morrison?
Jim Morrison Doors. That's
Doors.
the third
There we go. There we
movie
go.
that's
There we
on
go.
the Mount Rushmore.
There we go.
Now, fourth, I believe, is debatable because you have Heat, which he plays the bad guy, and Pacino and De Niro are in it.
Okay.
And it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah, sounds
But
like
then
it.
you also have The Saint, in which he plays the Saint, like a James Bond ripoff kind of character, and also Elizabeth Shue's in that. So you have to give a little credence. To the fact
Adventures
that
in
Elizabeth-
Babysitting?
Uh-huh.
Dude, she'd be my girl crush if I had one, for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah, David and I have discussed the virtues and merits of Elizabeth
Yeah.
Shue many times in this newsroom. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Heat just because while Elizabeth Shue is a goddess, you had Pacino and De Niro in Heat. So
Yeah, that's a pretty good line.
But anyway, yeah, no, great actor, and of course he made his last appearance was in Top Gun Maverick,
Yes.
where he played Iceman as an older
Talk about
retired
goosebumps.
admiral. Oh my God,
Yeah.
Scene made me cry.
Yeah.
Just absolutely made me cry. So, but I think we're going to go through this weekend and watch. I think we'll watch Maverick and Top Gun, and then I think we haven't watched The Doors. So yeah, but obviously Tombstone, since it's one of my top movies, we watch that. So anyway, just
R.I.P.
Great actor.
Yeah.
Great actor. So, and then so we're done. We have one election down and one to go.
Yep.
We have Hannibal next week, but we got Quincy done. So
Yeah.
that's
Woohoo.
good. And in looking at how everything shook out, I mean, I'm not surprised in the overall outcome, but I was surprised in the margins. And if anybody read what I wrote today.
I did. It was fantastic. You were just looking for that.
I already told you.
Somebody
it was
went-
great.
But you need to say it on here so everybody knows.
That's
Great,
me
but
fishing.
Everyone has said it was great. I don't think you've gotten
Negativity.
any kind of negative
It's
comments.
the first thing that I think
Yes.
you've written in a long time
That hasn't
gotten
F you, Bob.
severe backlash.
Yeah, it was so.
It was very good.
Yeah, so no,
I'm impressed
I was.
in the ability of your ability to recall. Like you
David helped a lot,
recall-
though. David,
okay.
we went through and got
Okay.
stats and numbers, and
Okay.
no,
The
it's
Google.
The Google.
The
The Google was very helpful. Also, just the Ryan Niecamp's election website, the
All
precinct by precinct breakdowns and all that stuff that I really we can talk about a little bit when our guest is on. But you look at this, and again, I think that in the big picture, I think one of the things I hope comes out of this election is, could we please focus on the future? Could we please focus more on the city as a whole?
Yeah.
What needs to happen? How do we grow? How do we make things better? How do we make this, it's
Quincy
already
first.
it's already a great place to live, but how do we make it better instead of all the crap that gets thrown out? And that's been a bad trend here the last few years. And again, I when you talk about that and the stuff that we see at the national level, and I think let's face it, our president's kind of the guy who throws a lot of shit out there. And I just think there are people who try to emulate that on a local level, and I just don't think it works. I mean, on this level, we're talking about our friends and our neighbors and people who we go to church with and people who our kids go to school together. And when you just throw shit out there for just the reason of trying to score political points or whatever, we have a real human element here because we're this little town of 40,000 people, and we all should just try to get along. And we can certainly disagree without being disagreeable, or in most cases, disagree without being just a flaming asshole.
Yeah.
And I think if we just had more of that kind of discussion, because trust me, I'm all about debates and all about the pros and cons of issues and all that. But if people just, it's real great to just sit there at the keyboard and just fire off shit. But if you want to sit across a table from somebody and having a cup of coffee or having a beer or whatever, that's when you can really have a good conversation about, hey, how do we move things forward with an agenda that helps everybody, the whole rising tide lifts all boats thing, and let's try to just move forward instead of, oh yeah, this person's this, or yeah, this person's that, or oh my God, 10 years ago this person did something. It's just like, Jesus H. I mean, come on, let's move this thing ahead. And I just think we're going to get I hope that this election is a turning point, and I hope this election is the end of, hey, that didn't work out so well. Let's see what we can do to move the ball forward and just put our own messages out there. That's where I really hope we get out of this. And again, this is from a guy who's been involved in campaigns in the past, and I can very proudly say that any campaigns that I was involved with or I worked on, we tried to focus on our candidate, on the message, on the positives that my candidate will bring to the office.
Yeah.
And I don't know why people can't do that. I don't trust me. I've been on more losing campaigns than I've been on winning campaigns. So, but still, I've never been a part of a campaign where I walked away from it afterwards and said, I was ashamed of myself. I was like, look, we fought the good fight. We did what we can do. We did the best we could do. We laid it all out there. We stated our case. And there's too many times where I would hope that a person would get done with a campaign and go, I feel kind of shitty. I really shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
Yeah.
So that's my stump speech.
Yeah. I think all you can do
Even though for somebody who's I'm never going to run a political campaign again, let me put it out there, because for the sake of my marriage, I'm never going to be involved in a political campaign or never run for office. So
well, and
how's that? Is that clear?
That's kind of where I wanted to go with it. And were you getting ready to say something? I don't want to
Well, I mean, what I gathered from that big speech was mudslinging doesn't work.
Yeah.
No.
That's a good way to sum it up, sister.
No. I think there's so much of. I think if that becomes your modus operandi, it's kind of like, dude, what about you? What have you done? What are you going to do? What can you do to make this thing better? And again, and talk about building a team, lifting a team. It's again just everybody participating and everybody moving and rowing the oars in the same direction. Yeah. So
I think it's a lot. It's all about hope. Everybody wants hope. So when you're behind a party that's like, oh, let's talk about the bad things here and what this didn't happen and this person does this, and it's like that's not what people want anymore. It's played out. We want to know we want something to look forward to. What can we look forward to? That should be what people focus on. How do we move forward?
You mentioned hope. Does that mean you want to hear about a man from Hope who ran on that?
No, I don't. Change? I know that you look for any opportunity to stick that in there, but that was
because
not
my
what I
wife
was
and
going.
daughter will watch and they'll cringe and they'll go, God, would you quit doing that?
Yeah. That being said, though, I just want to take a step back, and anyone who's willing to, we've said this before, throw their hat in the ring on a local level or not on any level in the political arena. Hats off to them, because it's not easy. It's a thankless, most of the time, job. You're never going to be able to please everybody. You're constantly, even if you want to go have a drink or a nice dinner with your family, you're going to have people coming up to you, talking about the things that they think you could do better, and why did you do this, and why wouldn't you do this, and you're never going to be able to please everyone at the same time. And it's just kind of it's not the easiest for one, but to even make it the decision to do it says that you do have hope, and you do want to put, our community first. And I think that that's commendable on both sides. When you do something like this, it's bigger than yourself, and I think that's incredible.
But it's also the whole not just running for office, but in kind of what we all do now. I mean, you guys have experienced this since you've been part of the team or whatever, and Brittany and I were talking about this the other day, is the fact that, you in your role now, you get a lot of people who you might want to just go have family time, but hey, guess what? I want to talk to you about what you said on whatever.
Yeah. And it could be flack or it could be compliments. Either way, it's just a different world, and I'm not that's not like, oh my gosh, we're so famous, but blah, blah, blah.
No,
but
not at all.
It is a different world, and you have to have a little bit thicker skin, and that's just us. And I can't imagine what anybody who works for the city, like we were bitching about them the other day, anybody who is in city council, of course the mayor, anyone who's in that political limelight, that's like, you're inevitably going to screw up somewhere along the line in someone's eyes. You have to be able to take that flack.
And you have to be able to come to the terms that you'll never have peace
Ever.
in your world.
No, not at all.
And I hope that we're not sitting up here scaring our guests, but I think that
on second thought,
right? Yeah, she's like, you know what, we got to get out of here. But I do think that it's very cool that this guest is here. Thank you both for securing her, and also really, really excited. Goes really well into my more is more speech, because I think that we're all expecting more, and I do think that she will bring it.
Speaking of that,
yeah,
we'll be back with our guest.
There we go.
I feel like nothing changes if nothing changes, and it is time for a change. There's been a discrepancy in transparency over the last couple of years especially, and the people deserve to know what is going on, where their tax dollars are going, what exactly they're being used for, and that too has been an issue. It shouldn't be a fight. It shouldn't be a question. You know, this is how it is. You need to let us know what's going on. My name is April Azate, and I am running for City Council representing Ward 2 in Hannibal, Missouri.
The Liquor Booth is your home for a huge selection of beer, wine, and spirits. The Liquor Booth has 2 locations in Quincy, 3520 Broadway and 1500 North 12th Street. The Liquor Booth, where it's always happy hour.
I know. I used to babysit her.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then her little brother Evan thought I was the real life Britney Spears.
Oh, because you told him that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Weren't you?
Yeah.
I thought I was in the presence of fame.
Well, we are in the presence of fame.
Right? Oh, are we rolling?
Yeah.
Let us be the first of, not the first, but the first on a podcast, we'll say
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So you're not sworn in yet, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
I won't be sworn in until May 5th.
Okay, well,
Cinco de Mayo.
Ooh.
congratulations. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say it. I predicted it. I rooted for it. Thank you for running.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
As I was saying before, it takes a lot of, I think, courage even to throw your name in the hat, right?
Right.
You're, like we were talking before, you're not going to make everybody happy all the time. That's understandable. It's not something that everybody's willing to do, so thank you. And welcome to Club Muddy.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's great to be here.
So let's talk about a little bit, before we talk about what everybody wants to hear about, which is the election and what you plan to do and blah, 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 blah. Let's talk about how you got here.
Okay.
Okay, so Linda Moore, everybody.
Hello.
We are in the presence of fame.
We are, yes.
By the mere fact that history was made as she is the first female mayor.
Let's just take a second. No, I'm kidding. Because I don't want to make it very, like, I don't want to be male, female.
Yeah,
this is what, you know, we don't want to.
It's still history.
It is historical and very proud to be able to witness it.
Well,
So-
and I can tell you 4 years ago, Nora Baldner and I had a conversation about how I didn't think Quincy was quite ready for a female mayor yet.
Right.
And this time around, we kind of had the same conversation, and I said, well, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
You know, because I felt like a lot has changed in 4 years. So, you know, I basically, after being asked by both of the other candidates to be on their executive team, I decided if I'm going to work that hard, why shouldn't I put my name in the hat
100%.
and work for me so that I'm in charge and the buck stops with me,
Right.
rather than being caught between a mayor and a council.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is
So-
what you were talking about, which I think is really interesting. And you being in charge, of course, is you being in charge of your destiny. Because one of the main points that a lot of people are saying, especially online, which we'll get to more of that in just a second, is, you know, the city council kind of, they are your boss, right?
The city council makes the decision.
Right.
Just like if you're an executive director of a nonprofit organization, your board of directors is your boss.
Sure.
You know, and it's not one person, it's multiple people who serve on a board of directors.
Right.
The same goes here. And I wouldn't necessarily say the council is my boss.
Okay.
But the council's in charge.
Sure.
And the council is the one that makes the decisions. So if there's something I want to push through, I have to use my influence and influence at least 8 of the 14.
Right.
Although I would say I want to influence 14 of the 14. I don't ever want there to be a 7-7 tie that I have to break.
Sure.
I'm sure there will be. But I want to know that we're all on the same page.
100%.
You know, and I know they have objectives as well. I want to know what their objectives are and how they plan to serve their ward and how I can help them do that.
Right.
Because they're the ones who are really closer to the constituents. And so it's my job to make sure I understand their priorities and I can work with them to help them achieve their goals.
Sure. Facilitating, absolutely. Which I know this isn't your first go around with facilitating, right? So we were talking about how you got here. I was talking to my husband yesterday and I was like, I don't know, I think she was a bigwig at ESPN and maybe Disney. And then I was kind of doing some Googling and it was like, your team led the SB Awards, turning it into like a profitable venture. And I was kind of like, holy shit, I didn't know she was this cool, right? Okay, so can you give me a little bit of information on, what brought you here, how you got here? Sorry to be I was informal.
Say the same thing about, I think some people are a little confused on that with the X Games and stuff like that, so tell that story clearly so people understand it. Our good friends Josh and Frankie weren't too clear on the situation.
Yeah, so. Sure. Well, I went to work for ESPN in 1996 after I had done the Olympics in Atlanta. And my job in Atlanta, I was at the main operations center with big screens in front of me. It was kind of like mission control. The FBI sat behind me with a red phone directly to the White House. Yes. You know, it was pretty cool.
Don't press this button.
Yeah, I knew where every pencil was at every venue, you know, not just the competition venues, but also the media venues, the transportation venues, everything. So I was the logistics person. So I knew what was coming and going at every venue. It was a pretty cool job for a sports fan because I got to see every minute of every competition.
Yeah.
So as a sports fan, after you do that, what do you do next?
Yeah.
And I really didn't know. I had some offers to go to work for freight forwarders and, you know, different logistics partners. But I was like, no, that sounds kind of boring. Yeah, exactly.
Coming from that,
hello.
Yeah, a friend of mine called and said, you know, we're moving the Extreme Games to California, San Diego. We've got a job for you. It might be beneath you, but if you want to live on the beach for a couple of years, come on out. And I was like, 2 years on the beach sounds good to me. So I packed up my car, moved cross country to San Diego.
How old were you at this
point? At the time,
like?
I was 36.
Okay.
So, you know, and I was single, so it was like, why not?
Yeah.
You know, California dress is, you know, flip-flops and shorts. You know, maybe you wear a polo if you've got a meeting. So I thought, yeah, this sounds pretty good. Well, the job I took was Participant Services Manager, which that was a glorified athlete babysitter.
Okay. I was like, what is that?
And at that point, the athletes were not really what I thought of as athletes because I'm used to the Olympic situation,
big names.
you know. So these kids were mostly 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. A lot of people on the streets would have called them punks. You know,
I said and then I was like, wait a minute, they're all assholes, but for the most part,
Well, and that's how I thought of some of them because, but what I found is they were just misunderstood.
Sure.
You know, most of them were anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian. They just wanted to pursue their sport of skateboarding or BMX or inline skating at the time, windsurfing, you know, all kinds of sports that weren't mainstream. Yeah. And most people didn't really know much about those sports. Well, I took care of their housing, their transportation, their catering and hospitality, their prize money, their registration, their credentials. So they quickly learned, oh, she's the one who signs the checks.
She's like Mama Linda.
Well, I was thinking that because you're also, any kids at that age are like unmanageable, let alone athletes.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That think they're a little entitled, but
exactly.
Well, awesome. Wow.
And a lot of them at that time lived paycheck to paycheck that they got from their prize money.
Sure.
You know, and prize money, you know, first place was probably $3,000 back then. I don't remember exactly.
So were you like
it wasn't a
budgeting
lot
their
of money.
money?
Pretty much,
oh, wow.
But when they found out I could clip their credentials, I could hold their check, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I better maybe listen
Mama Linda's
to her.
not so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew to be, I love them, every single one of them. I mean, I had kids that if you heard about their background and their family situation, it would bring you to tears.
Yeah.
You know, so I got to know them on a personal level, and I really respected that they knew where their talent was, and they knew they had something, they just didn't know how to express it.
Sure.
And most mainstream America didn't understand how to appreciate it either. So they grew with the X Games.
Yeah.
you know, and over the years I took on more and more responsibility. After a couple of years, I was in charge of what we called our auxiliary events, our X-Trials events, our Bikes, Blades, and Boards events, B3, and that's where I really got into the budgeting. And corporate quickly found out I was the only one on the team who could meet a budget.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, we need her doing the finance. So then I started taking on more and more in the original entertainment unit, and the ESPYs was one of them. George Bodenheimer, who was the president at the time, came to me and he said, you know, we think the ESPYs could make a lot of money, and especially we could make a lot of money for the V Foundation for Cancer Research. Can you take a look and maybe turn it around? And the executive director, the executive producer of the ESPYs was a wonderful woman. She passed during the pandemic, and it was a huge creative loss to all content creators. But she liked to spend money.
Yeah.
And she knew if there was a problem, she could throw money at it and it would be fixed. So I worked with her, and we found ways to not just throw money at a problem, but to fix it more efficiently.
Get creative.
And to get creative. Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Justin Timberlake happened to be our host that year. He was amazing. What talent, you know, he had.
Yeah.
And I would say he was probably the best host that I ever worked with. But it was just a lot of fun, you know, and all the athletes were there from every sport. We had a lot of athletes who took a charter in. You know, one of the things I did is we brought a lot of the baseball guys in from the home run derby the night before, and they were all on separate planes, private jets. I'm like, no, they're all coming from the same city, going to the same city. They can share a plane.
They can all smell each other's feet for a little bit. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was one way to save a whole lot of money because those private charters were $25,000 a piece.
Yeah.
You know, and when you're bringing 8 or 10 of them, it adds up pretty quickly.
I need Linda to budget my life.
I was just thinking the same thing, but I also wish I was there, like, alongside her during those days, because when you think about the X Games, and it was little known, and now it's like, holy smokes, you were a part of that. That's so cool. So then that past brings you back to Quincy. How?
Well, I had my 55 and out plan at ESPN.
Okay.
You know, and I went so far, even my password was 55 and out.
Really?
Way back then.
It's changed since then, guys. Don't even try to hack it. Okay,
changed.
all right.
But everything I was doing was thinking, okay, when I get to 55, I'm out. I need to get home because I knew my dad's health wasn't good.
Okay.
He had a heart attack in 2007. Dr. K said, well, maybe he might have 5 years in him. We got almost 12, 13 years out of him, you know, which was wonderful.
That's incredible.
So I was so glad that I came back when I did. And I really didn't intend on working. I was just going to volunteer. You know, I didn't need to work. I had a pension from ESPN, which ESPN was owned by the Walt Disney Company.
Yes.
So I have a Disney pension.
Nice.
And I wanted to, the other reason I wanted to retire when I did, I wanted to retire as a Disney employee because that comes with magic passes and magic card to go to Disney. You know,
could you hook us this up?
How often do you go?
Not often enough. But at the time I had young nieces and nephews. So, you know, I'm the favorite aunt because I take them to Disney.
Duh.
So
I need another aunt too.
Yeah,
Hello.
I like to go
Hi,
every
Aunt
few
Linda.
years.
Yeah. You mentioned Justin Timberlake. Do you have his phone number in your phone?
No, I don't.
What would be the most famous person's phone number in your phone?
Oh, good question. Ronnie Lott.
Do we know him, everybody?
I'm looking. Okay. Bob,
All the sports guys do.
Bob, chime in.
Okay.
Played
Hall
for
of
the
Fame
San
safety
Francisco.
for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
Also played for the Jets and the Raiders.
Are you disappointed in us?
No, not really. That's
'Cause
one you
you
shouldn't
know.
know.
That's a total expectation.
No.
Sports.
No.
Okay.
At one time, I had Ricky Horton from the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
He's changed his phone number since, so I don't
Yeah.
have his new number. But
How impressive.
you know, and to me, I probably rubbed elbows with a lot of
cool people.
celebrities, but to me, they were just people.
Yeah.
You know, I had a job to do, they had a job to do, and we had to do our jobs together.
And you're like,
You weren't that impressed.
You're like, listen, Mr. Lott, you have to be on this plane with other people coming because I have to save money.
He would have never said that. He would have said, just however
Just
you
however
need to
you
get
do.
me there,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Very cool.
You know, Jerry Rice was another one. Ronnie and Jerry
I know
are
that
probably
name.
my two
Yeah.
favorite people that I've ever had any interaction with. Both of them are down to earth. Jerry's PR person called me and wanted to come to the X Games in LA one year. And I'm like, sure, come on down and, just stop in my office and I'll see what I can do for you. She came in and I got her some VIP credentials and everything, and she was like, what can I do for you? What do you want? What do you need?
Yeah.
So I have an autographed picture of Jerry Rice. I have a football autographed by Jerry Rice. And I love, those things are meaningful to me. I also have a Joe Montana autographed jersey.
That's cool.
Will these be going in your office?
Well, the jersey won't, because I actually left it into my will to a friend.
Okay.
And I actually already gave it to him. He lost his wife a year ago. And I thought, you know what? He needs a pick-me-up, so it was in my will. I thought he'll get it someday. He might as well have it now.
You are like the pick-me-up person, and you were mentioning, like in your story with the kids and the X game, helping them grow. I noticed that, obviously that was your slogan, that you want to help Quincy grow. Personally, anytime we've chatted, you've always tried to even help me grow. I think you do that with whoever you encounter. You're always looking to help them grow better. Not that they're not that there's anything wrong with them, but I know you think there's always room for growth, and I do like that. But in regards to your slogan and helping Quincy grow, does that have anything to do with population?
Hopefully, yes.
Okay, so you do think we need to grow as we need to add more in population? Right,
I think so. One of the first things I want to do, and I'm hoping to find an intern who can help me with this, somebody who wants to learn more about city government. I want to take every little neighborhood that's within that 1.5 miles of the city limits, and I want to do a study. I want to look at their property tax bill and how much would their property tax bill increase if they were in the city. So they'd pay the same county taxes and school district, park district, all of that kind of stuff. But then if they also had to pay city taxes, how much would that be? Because we know the EAV and we know all of the rates and everything, so we can factor that. Then we'll look at their water bill, and if you're in that 1.5 miles, most people are paying 3 times what you pay if you're a city resident. So how much will their water bill decrease? If it's a situation where their property tax goes up but their water bill decreases and it's an advantage for the resident, for the homeowner, then they may want to come in. Well, if 4 or 5 homes in that neighborhood are all the same way and it's more advantageous to them financially to be part of the city, and the city doesn't have to spend more money on infrastructure, water, sewer lines because they're already there, then it's going to make sense for the city to take them in. So we may be able to increase our population with just that footprint of the school district.
My mind is blown.
Without bringing people in from elsewhere who we're trying to entice with extra incentives and things. It's look at how we can change things for you that already exist.
This would be awesome to include the voter too. Online you saw so many people saying, I wanted to vote. I live right there, but I'm
so many people.
a mile outside of city limits. To say that growth would be just expanding city limits, I think is amazing. The thought of growth, of bringing more people and paying them here is a Quincy, and personally, it does irk me and disgust me, and I certainly don't need more people driving down Main Street.
12 miles an hour, God dang it.
Yeah, but they're already here.
Yeah,
and they're already driving our streets.
And this is what we were talking about, that population to us when we're talking about growth has always been presented in a way that we want to bring people in a recruitment sort of way to take jobs that may already belong to people, use resources that may or may not exist. We don't have housing. There's just so many things, and it always seemed like we're putting the cart before the horse just to use a metric of population to show that we've grown, when growth in that sense may not be good for Quincy.
Right.
What you're explaining is fantastic.
Growth and inclusion.
In inclusion.
Yes, exactly.
So
they're already here. They're already paying the sales tax and the food and beverage tax and the grocery tax.
Right.
Is on the books. So I call them the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And let's say even the differential is for them to be part of the city, it's going to cost them $500 more a year.
Yeah.
Then the question is it worth it to you to pay $500 extra to be able to cast your vote for mayor?
Right.
Because whoever the mayor is going to impact you.
Right.
So what's that worth to you?
Right.
And I had people who told me I would pay any amount of money if I could vote for the mayor because it really does impact me, especially zoning rules and, 100%.
100%.
all of that.
Yes.
So I think we need to look at that. The other thing is, in many cases, our police and fire departments are already kind of servicing them. So it doesn't add to their plate that they've got to now cover a wider area.
Right.
And if we could get more people in our population, 50,000 is the magic number. And the school district footprint, I think, is like almost 52,000.
Okay.
So if we can get somewhere between 50 and 52, there are a number of state and federal grant programs that we would automatically get. We don't have to apply for them. It's just money that comes in. During the pandemic, that differential would have been about $8 million. So, there may be opportunities to get more money in if we just work smarter.
And this is something that I've never known before, that based on population, you get grant. You knew that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not always a huge fan of grants, but it is one of those things I go back and forth. If the money's on the table, then we might as well use it.
Exactly. But if the money's out there anyway and it's going to go to somebody, then let's take our fair share.
Right.
Also,
rather than letting it go to some other district in California or New York or
I understand
Timbuktu.
that.
Yeah.
So I have more questions on things. We'll talk potholes
Also, though,
in
if
just
we
a
get
second. But
50,000, I think we get an Olive Garden.
is that? Listen, that's the last thing I want. But I know a lot of people love it. But
that's my least favorite.
yes,
Italian.
right, okay.
But you mentioned zoning. I'm gotta add this one in here.
Yes, 100%.
You mentioned zoning and how the rezoning was worrying people, especially on the outside limits. We saw how the zoning issue happened with the development. What are your thoughts on redistricting zoning, aka the city's Bible, I guess?
Well, and I'm not an expert at the zoning and all the rules.
Right.
That's our planning and development office. But the one thing I know is that as we think about annexing areas that are more rural, the 250 feet notice, when you're going to change something isn't enough because there may not be a home in 250 feet. Maybe that needs to be 500 feet. Maybe that needs to be 1,000 feet.
Right.
That's something that our experts need to take a look at. And we probably need to differentiate if you're sitting on 4th and Main or if you're sitting at 48th and Columbus Road.
Yeah, there could
There's
be
a difference.
case by case.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay, I do want to get back to like the potholes and the infrastructure and stuff like that because I know that that's kind of the meat and potatoes of what people are wanting to hear about, right? But back to how you got here and how you kind of decided to throw your hat in the ring. It's obvious to me, I don't want to speak for everyone, that you're qualified. Why did you decide? I think when I was going for alderman, I was like, "What the hell are you doing, Ashley? Oh my gosh, you're such an idiot. Oh my gosh, what are you doing here?" Right? What made you say, "This is going to be worth it. This is what I want to do"?
I don't know that I ever knew it would be worth it. I just knew I needed to do something.
Okay.
And
was there a sticking point, or was it like just kind of a culmination?
It was. I would say it's a culmination
Okay.
of things. The other thing is I asked a lot of people to run for alderman or other offices, and I kept getting the same answer. Oh, my clients are half Democrats, half Republicans.
Yeah.
I don't want to alienate either of them, so no, I don't want to run. So I decided if I can run as an independent and show them that you can have an independent campaign and we can be free of party politics,
Yes.
then maybe I can inspire other really good people to run as well. Because this year, other than mayor, none of our city offices were contested.
Yeah.
And I think we're always better when we have competition.
Yeah. I agree.
So,
I
Yeah.
didn't fill in some of those ovals even if they weren't contested because I wasn't going to bump up my voter
Yeah.
percentage with that.
So when I ran as an independent, and it did get thrown at me a lot that I was registered Republican for so long, and I know that you were registered Democrat, and that gets thrown around like it should mean something. I don't necessarily think that it does, which has been a big kind of platform for policy over party, which I think
the person over party.
right. I think we all kind of agree that that's how it should be, especially on a local level. you still have the naysayers who are like, well, I guess we'll wait and see. I'm thankful that they're saying that, because wait and see is better than, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But,
and I've been called a lot of names.
Yeah.
But I've been called names before.
Yeah. Again, thick skin comes into play, right? So when you're talking about the culmination of things that, you know, helped you decide to run, then you run, and I think everything from my standpoint looked well from a voter standpoint, because I was looking on social media, watching people talk about you in either a can't wait, this is going to be a different candidate, or a she's a Democrat, I want to know how she's going to do this. And then I would see your name pop up with a comment right under their skepticism. And you commented on almost everything, every question from any constituent that doubted you. And to me, that's what sealed the deal as far as my vote for you. Not just the communication style, but the fact that you're not scared to go out and tell people what you stand for.
Right.
So was that a plan? Was that...
Well, you could say that was part of the strategy. I had a great team.
Yeah.
You know, I personally didn't put every one of those comments on.
Fine.
I approved every one of those comments, but that was part of what we wanted to do. We wanted to listen to the voters. And listening means that you have to give them some feedback that you understand where they're coming from, and either validate their comment or not.
Right.
You know, and I was called out on a few things. I mean, one of my memories from when I first moved to Connecticut, and I had an election judge who made me feel like this tall, and that's a vivid memory I have in my mind, but we found out that couldn't have been how it happened. But I'm like, wait a minute, but that's how I remember it. You know, so... And good for him, because now I learned something.
Wait, so this isn't the first time you've ran for office?
No, this is, well,
okay.
I ran for treasurer.
Okay.
But when I first voted in Connecticut, I had an election judge who made me feel stupid.
Gotcha.
Because I didn't see the R's or the D's. There were a lot of U's. And in Connecticut, we found out that the U is unattached.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Because how's that different than independent? It's really not.
Yeah. Well, in Connecticut, I guess they have an independent party. Mm-hmm. So unattached means you're not attached to any of them. But also in Connecticut, you could have your name on a ballot and you could run as a Republican, as an independent, as a working families party, as a Green Party, as a Libertarian.
Gotcha.
I mean, you could have your name 5 times on the ballot.
Oh, okay.
That's weird.
Yeah.
You know, but that's how every state's a little bit different.
Right.
But the state runs the election, how the state runs the election.
Right. Yeah. So I digress. I'm sorry. So in talking about your team and commenting, and I think, you know, people were talking about person or character over policy, as well as, you know, person over party. And I think that for me, it was communication. I think a lot of people who value communication, who value transparency, were like, let's give it a go.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
You know, people were tired of the partisan party politics, where if you're a Republican, you have to do it this way.
Yes.
Or if you're a Democrat, you have to do it this way. And both parties are at fault. You know, I think people are tired of party politics and the drama that goes along with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big reason why a lot of people voted for me. It may not have been a vote for me, it was a vote against party politics.
Right.
Also, historically, she is the first independent candidate that won. I believe.
Mayor.
Yeah. Well, independent altogether, I believe, in city elections.
Listen.
So, like she said, you know, that was maybe the vote for doing away with party politics.
Yeah.
I know that we have learned, we talk about it all the time, but the reason, like a lot of reason for party politics is funding and money. I noticed in this handout that I won't let you guys touch. I was telling Ashley I couldn't find something to clean out my teeth, and this was the only hard thing in my car.
Listen, I was like, I will put my finger right in your tooth and clean something out if you need it, but go ahead.
But in this, it describes, this is all the things that Trope did good, which we were discussing. That's how you want to run your election. But then on the back was some mudslinging, and I do think that is kind of what killed the election. But part of the mudslinging was saying where you got your funding from. and I'm not sure, like it says 20% of Linda's funding comes from Democrat-backed unions and PACs, 31% of Linda's funding comes from outside of Quincy. I guess I don't understand the difference if you're a party politic person and say you're Republican. What we were told is that money comes from higher up. It's not coming from in Quincy. How is that different, I guess? And
well, it shouldn't. I did get money from a lot of the unions. And those unions represent the working people in Quincy.
I guess what's the problem with that is my question. I don't understand.
You tell me. When you can't find dirt, you dig and you make it sound like dirt.
Okay. Right.
That's the mudslinging.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need that locally. Bob made the comment earlier that the mudslinging just didn't work.
Yeah.
Nope.
And so, but that's typical in politics. When I signed up, I knew that if I had any skeletons in my closet, they were going to find them.
Yeah.
And I also know that one of the parties did a thorough background search on me back in 2016 and couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
But they dug up my giving history to political candidates, and found out that the last two candidates I gave to was Nikki Haley and Nikki Budzinski.
Yeah.
Nikki Haley, of course, ran for president. I wish she had stayed in longer because I think she had the vision that more people really wanted to see.
Yeah.
But, her party at the end said, hey, you need to step back. And then Nikki Budzinski is the congresswoman that represents the district to the south and east of us. She has brought hundreds of millions of dollars into her district from what they call congressionally directed funding. It used to be earmarks. They just changed the name of it.
Yeah.
And she got what was allotted for her district plus more because other representatives, like our representative, said, I'm not going to use any of the money. And the thing is, our district could use some money.
Sure.
We have a lot of issues in our district.
Yeah.
And I understand where she's coming from. And if turning down that money meant it was going to drop to the bottom line and be a savings, I'm all for it.
Sure.
But that's not what happened. It just goes to other districts.
Yeah.
So by not taking it, in essence, it really hurts us.
And also, as far as funding goes, we all know that funding for political campaigns, it can come from unsavory sources as far as the other party's concerned, okay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When I'm looking at funding and I'm looking at what it's used for. When you use your party or your campaign groups to comment on things and to encourage transparency and answer questions to the community, do a rock, paper, scissors thing that brings the community together. I didn't see that on the other side. I may be wrong, but it was just the difference in, yes, I care where the money's coming from at a certain extent, but how it's used locally is a lot more important to me, and I think it's becoming more and more important to other people. Also, what I will say to that fact is people are tired of the mudslinging, and I think it's becoming more apparent that the extreme Republicans aren't the voice of the majority of the party anymore. So even though they may be the loudest and they may talk about national politics on a local level, people are kind of starting to see through that we have bigger gardens to tend here,
right,
versus politics or agendas that may not really affect us. That, yes, as a Republican, generally, I may agree with you on a national level, but do I think that that's going to really hit us here? Probably not. Also, if Pritzker mandates something here, Trope would have had to adhere to it as well,
exactly.
Right? So it's not like we're dealing with, oh, well, she's going to be a Pritzker minion or something, right?
Yeah,
that's
right.
how I feel. I don't know a lot about that. Thoughts?
I agree. I mean, you have to respect who's ever in the governor's seat,
right,
and whoever is in the president's seat, whoever is in the senators and the congressmen and women's seat. They're serving the public, and we all have to work together at every level.
Right.
So, I mean, I didn't get any money from Pritzker.
Right.
I didn't get any money from Durbin. I didn't even ask them. And if they had wanted to contribute, I probably would have said, no, thank you.
Bad idea, yeah.
And even if Donald Trump had called me to say, hey, I want to write you a check, or Elon Musk had called to say, I want to write you a check, I probably would have said, thank you, I appreciate the support,
Just
but no
send me a
thank you.
Tesla.
Well, exactly.
Just send me a couple. Ashley needs one too. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
yeah.
Linda.
I don't want a Tesla.
Yeah.
What I want is the data that Tesla could provide us, because they have a program that can tell you where every pothole is on every street.
There you go.
Really?
Yes.
What a
It's
segue.
like, I want that.
Yes.
Yeah, what
You know,
a segue.
What a
Because
segue.
Wouldn't that be nice? We don't have to collect it on a spreadsheet, and we don't have to send our guys out and hope they see every pothole. But that would be so
awesome.
cool. So I want to find out more about that.
How do we use
How do we get
AI?
that? And maybe it's a matter of if the company would simply make that program available to municipalities
Open protocol, baby.
at a very low price. That could help every city in the country.
Yeah.
Is that a part of the plan, the 100 days, filling 100 potholes, or what is the plan?
Well, it would take me more than 100 days, I think, to get that program.
Yes.
The 100 days plan is real simple. I had talked to some of the guys who have worked on the pothole crew or who are on the pothole crew, and I said, can this be done? Is it doable? And they assured me that, yes, if it's done right, it can be done in 100 days. First thing we do is have to educate the public. What streets and roads are city roads versus which ones are county versus which ones are state? Because like we can all say Broadway is the worst, but that's a state road.
Yeah.
So the city really can't fix those potholes. We can facilitate that through the state, but that's another entity.
Yeah.
All of the city managed roads are the ones I'm talking about that I want to do in 100 days.
Yeah.
And
York Street, you're welcome. Jimmy Patterson.
yes, we need to know not just that there's 5 potholes on this block. We also need to know, okay, what's the schedule for replacing those pipes underneath? Or are the pipes all good?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it doesn't do any good to replace a street and then a year later dig it up because a pipe burst.
You're speaking my linguity here,
So,
sister, because I was
yeah.
about to say with the recent rainstorm, it proved that our sewers are also in dire need.
We
So
call it
absolutely.
the sewer apocalypse around here.
apocalypse, I think, is what it was.
Are you nervous about that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, I got emails and messages on Facebook about there's water in my basement again. When's the city going to fix this? You know, so there's a lot of issues underground that
Yeah.
need to be addressed. And so everything has to be systematic. But like, let's say there's a road that we know we're going to rebuild in 2 years. Well, we don't need to do a perfect replacement
Patch.
to fix the
Sure.
potholes. You just slap some stuff in it, level it the best you can, and let it hold for 2 years.
Right.
You know, so we have to be very systematic about that and do what we have to do to get the best and the easiest and the quickest fix across everything. And we also have to then communicate, hey, we know this road is really bad and there's 150,000 patches on this block, but it's on the schedule to be replaced next year.
Right.
So we don't want to spend any extra money to make it better, knowing next year we're going to rebuild the street.
Yeah. But at least communication.
Exactly.
Saying, here's our plan.
Right. And that's a
100%.
lot of it.
Yeah.
You know.
So back to your kind of tracker thing, we were talking about roadkill the other day. I was like, all we need is a place where all the people can just go drop a flag. Here's
Yeah.
some roadkill, right? So then you're like, oh, we don't have to go search for it. We just find it. Same with potholes, right? Because you do need the public's input.
Oh, absolutely.
But you also have to have a way to communicate that. And I think one of the problems in local politics, social media, everywhere, is that if you're not 100% transparent, people create their own narrative. And that has been so apparent since day one. Is there anything that you plan to do to help create that, I don't want to say 100% because I know that that's not doable, but more transparency, that people know that there is a plan, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I intend to meet the 100 days plan.
Okay.
You know, that I have every intention of that. And so maybe it's every 30 days, I'm going to give an update.
Okay.
To say, you know, we have this many blocks that are city managed, we've done this many. You know, here's what we've done. If you find something not done there or something that needs repaired,
Yeah.
let us know.
And how do you plan to communicate?
That's still to be decided.
Okay.
I'd love to talk to a certain person in this room
Wink,
about
wink.
possibly doing, you know, weekly podcasts
update.
to do that. In a perfect world, I would love to have a Tuesday morning podcast and a Friday afternoon podcast. Tuesday morning would be updates, and here's what happened at council last night, and here's how this impacts you. Here's why the council made the decision they did.
Yeah.
The city needs to control the narrative, because if we don't, somebody
100%.
will.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the Tuesday morning podcast. Then on Friday afternoon, it would be, this is what's on Monday night's agenda. If you're for this, you need to call the alderman. If you're against this, you need to call your alderman. And not just one line on an agenda that says an ordinance impacting such and such an address. What is that ordinance?
What's it look like?
What's the meat
Yeah.
of that item? And at that point, then we can say, if you want A, B, and C, you're going to want to tell your alderman yes.
100%.
If you want D, E, and F, you're going to want to tell your alderman no.
Yeah.
Now, don't just let the loudest voice in your ward be heard. If this impacts you in any way, you need to call your alderman, and here's their phone number.
I don't know how more
Where is the
transparent you
hi-hat
can
symbol
get
that I can hit right now? I am so excited about this.
And to me, that's common sense.
Yeah.
Logic and
Yeah.
reasoning for Linda. One quick question back to the election. Sorry to
Sure.
bring up the mudslinging, if you will. But I was at your watch party. I listened to your speech, your victory speech, and the first thing you did was thank Mayor Mike Trope for his 4 years of service. Any thoughts on his concession speech? Is he being a big man baby?
I didn't even see it.
He said.
Yeah. He actually left me a voicemail that I didn't get until an hour later, because you know how phones work. Sometimes they don't. And I'm sure
And you were busy.
it may have been ringing and I didn't hear it because you were there. You know how loud it was. And we talked today actually about the transition plan and went over a number of meetings and events that are coming up here in the next 30 days that he wanted me to be aware of. Yeah. We're going to have a weekly conversation until I'm sworn in. So we're going to work together. Yeah. A lot of things happen during a campaign, and a lot of things are said during a campaign. I want to believe that's not the Mike Trope I knew.
Yeah, for sure.
He and I worked very well together when I was the treasurer and he was the mayor.
Yeah.
And we worked together on a lot of things.
Yeah.
He listened to what I had to say for the most part, and I felt good about that.
And if you're both running for the reason of the future of Quincy, you both are in the same boat. It's a like-minded venture, right? I mean,
we should both have the best interest
100%,
of Quincy at heart. Yeah.
Which I do fully believe that I think all candidates that came to the table do. It is unfortunate that mudslinging has become the norm. I also understand why it happens. It's just an unfortunate thing. But it's incredible sitting here talking to you, because I do think we talk about logic stuff all the time, and people are like, well, that's not going to work. Well, let's see. Let's try it.
Exactly.
Right? Give it a shot.
And if it doesn't, I'll come back here and I'll tell you it's not working. Here's why. So here's what I need you guys to do to help.
Yes. Right.
I'm not afraid to ask for help either.
Right. And then as far as management style, are you big on this is just because I'm such a dork in management style, but metrics and stuff? Do you have things that you're like, I want to reach this by this point and this is who I need to help do it? Is that how you roll?
I will have some of that.
Yeah.
That I will have.
Yeah.
It's called strategy.
100%.
If this is my goal, the how am I going to get there?
Yeah.
And by this date I need to be
And
here.
how am I
by
doing?
this date. Yeah. That kind of thing. I will have that, for me personally.
Right.
But then I will also have a scorecard, for lack of a better word, that I want to share with everybody.
Yeah.
And I want to do a scorecard on every department, on every alderman. I want to tell people in the ward, this is what your alderman has done for you.
Yeah.
We have one alderman that's the chairman of 7 committees.
And nobody knows.
And I know his ward does not know that. And you see him on Monday night and you think, well, he's pretty quiet. He never says anything.
What is that guy doing up there?
When he's leading a meeting, he does a really great job. The other thing is most people don't get to see the committee meetings. I would love to find a way to telecast every committee meeting.
Yeah.
And if you want to watch it and listen in, then here you go.
Those aren't kept those aren't kept behind closed
No,
doors?
no. I mean, they're open
Yeah.
meetings, you know, so anybody can go to them. But most people don't even know when they are, where they are, things like that.
Speaking of
So,
telecasting, I know there was a snafu about, well, the county does this for free and the city's spending this much money on this. Any idea or thoughts on that? Like the live streaming of the meetings?
We will be looking at that.
Perfect. I love that answer. Okay. I know you're losing your voice, so we can wrap this up pretty quick, but I did want to ask. So we talked about, like, a little bit earlier, you came through this process, very impressive in my opinion. What was something that was unexpected that you didn't really, you knew you were getting into this, but what's something that was like, holy shit, I didn't know that was going to happen?
Losing your voice on.
Well, yeah, that too.
That number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I knew there would be mudslinging. I knew they would attack me. I didn't know they would attack the things that are most important to me.
Really?
Yeah, that kind of surprised me.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Well, I'm sorry that that happened. I hope that the next unexpected thing is on the positive level, because I have no doubt that you talked about connecting things and making things a little more cohesive in a party of we versus they and, you know, us
The we
versus
party,
them.
I like that.
The we party, I think it's pretty incredible. You did that, not me. So yes, it is. It's necessary when you're trying to grow a community with hope, which I think is what everybody wants. We want hope for the future. What's done has been done. Unfortunately, that includes the mudslinging to things that you care most about. But I know that you and the rest of our community will look past all of that crap and will move forward with hope and so much ambition for our community. Thank you so much for throwing your hat in the ring. Am I cutting things off too short? I think this has been incredible. I hope that you
Fixing and growing.
Yeah, I hope that you're welcome back to do a weekly podcast. If not, I think that would just be incredible and help with transparency. And I think that's what everybody wants.
That's awesome.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mayor Linda Moore. Congratulations. You have made history, and we are so thankful to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Cheers.
what you do.
Yes, of course. Cheers.